Most people over 60 believe that if they just keep their cholesterol numbers in check and take their daily blood pressure medication, they are doing everything required to protect their heart. They think the heart-healthy advice they've followed for decades, low-fat diets, counting calories, and avoiding salt, is a foolproof insurance policy against the cardiovascular decline that seems to claim so many of their peers. But here is the hard, uncomfortable truth that most cardiologists aren't telling you in a 5-minute office visit. Those measures are merely holding the line. They aren't turning the tide. If you are currently managing your heart health solely through medication and standard dietary guidelines, you are essentially trying to patch a leak while the ship itself continues to rust. You are managing the symptoms, but you are not addressing the primary driver of cardiovascular aging that starts in your mid-50s and accelerates sharply every year after 60. It isn't just about cholesterol. It isn't just about blood pressure. It is about a silent, systemic change in how your heart muscle and your blood vessels communicate at a cellular level. There is one specific, often misunderstood dietary habit, a very specific way of eating salmon once a week that triggers a biological cascade capable of literally softening the stiffening architecture of your arteries. I am not talking about the generic eat more fish advice you've heard on every morning talk show. I am talking about a specific molecular protocol that changes the way your endothelial cells produce nitric oxide, the essential molecule that keeps your blood vessels flexible and youthful. If you've been told that your heart health is fine because your tests look normal, stay with me. Because in a moment, I'm going to explain why normal blood work can be misleading for someone over 60, and I'll show you why the standard heart-healthy grocery list is actually missing the one thing your heart needs most to regenerate its own vascular elasticity. We aren't just talking about preventing disease today. We are talking about biological rejuvenation. You might be wondering why a simple piece of fish, specifically salmon, has become the center of so much clinical curiosity lately. It's not just about the protein content or the healthy fats, though those are important. It is because of how salmon interacts with the aging cardiovascular system. To understand this, we have to look past the blood tests and look at the actual structural reality of your blood vessels. When we are in our 20 seconds or 30 seconds, our arteries have the elasticity of a high-quality rubber band. They expand with every heartbeat and contract to maintain pressure. But as we cross the age of 60, something called vascular stiffening begins to take hold. This isn't just getting older. It is a measurable physical change where the walls of your arteries lose their ability to relax. It's like a garden hose that has been left in the sun for years. It becomes brittle, rigid, and prone to microcracks. Before we dive into the specific way to consume salmon for maximum vascular benefit, I want to know who is listening. Quick favor before we go further. Drop your city, state, or country in the comments. When I see where people are watching from, it helps me tailor the advice for the specific environmental stressors or dietary habits you might be dealing with where you live. I read every one of them, and it helps me understand the unique challenges facing this community. Now, stay with me, because what I'm about to explain regarding your endothelial lining is something most people only hear about once they've already experienced a cardiovascular event. See, your endothelial lining is the inner layer of your blood vessels. Think of it as the control center for your circulation. When it is healthy, it signals your blood vessels to dilate, ensuring that oxygen-rich blood reaches your heart muscle without resistance. When it ages, that signal weakens. You start to see rising blood pressure, not because your heart is working too hard, but because your pipes are too stiff. Most people wait until that pressure is high enough to trigger a diagnosis before they take action. But the science I am looking at suggests that we can intervene long before that, by using specific nutrients to reteach those cells how to signal effectively again. To truly grasp why your current approach might be stalling, let me share a story about a patient I worked with. Let's call him Robert. Robert was the picture of good health on paper. At 68, his cholesterol was in the acceptable range. His blood pressure was controlled with a standard ACE inhibitor, and he prided himself on his daily 2-mile walk. He ate what he called a clean diet, skinless chicken breast, plenty of brown rice, and steamed vegetables. No fried foods, no sweets, no salt. Robert felt he had done everything right. But during a routine screening, he experienced an episode of exercise-induced shortness of breath that defied his test results. His standard labs were pristine, yet his stress test showed a subtle, concerning lack of blood flow reserve. He was confused. "I'm doing everything," he told me, frustrated. "I'm not eating fats, I'm not eating red meat, I'm walking every single day. Why is my heart struggling?" Robert was a victim of the silent stiffening trap. He was preventing the buildup of plaque, but he wasn't doing anything to support the elasticity of his vascular system. By strictly avoiding fats, he was accidentally starving his body of the very compounds needed to repair the endothelial lining. His arteries were clean of major blockages, but they were effectively paralyzed, unable to dilate when his heart demanded more oxygen during that walk. This is the hidden crisis for millions of seniors. We focus so heavily on what we don't want, high cholesterol, blocked arteries, excess weight, that we forget to provide the fuel for what we do need, cellular regeneration. Think of your cardiovascular system like an engine. Standard advice focuses on keeping the fuel lines clean. But if the engine parts themselves are worn down, corroded, and brittle, it doesn't matter how clean the fuel is, the engine will still falter under load. Robert's clean diet lacked the specific long-chain omega-3 fatty acids required to maintain the fluid, dynamic nature of the arterial wall. His cells were essentially running on dry, brittle energy. When we shifted his protocol, moving away from a strictly low-fat mindset to a targeted, nutrient-dense approach centered on specific wild-caught sources, the change wasn't immediate, but it was profound. Within months, his vascular resistance markers shifted. He wasn't just not getting worse. He was, for the first time in a decade, showing signs of functional improvement. He wasn't younger, but his heart was acting like it. To understand why salmon, specifically wild-caught varieties, stands in a category of its own, we have to look at the interaction between eicosapentaenoic acid, or EPA, and docosahexaenoic acid, or DHA, and your blood vessels. When we discuss healthy fats, the conversation is often too broad. Your body does not treat all fats equally. The long-chain omega-3s found in high concentrations in cold water fish are not just fuel, they are structural components. When you consume these fats, they don't just circulate and disappear. A significant portion is incorporated directly into the phospholipid bilayer of your endothelial cells. Think of your endothelial cells as the skin lining the inside of your arteries. Just like your skin needs moisture to stay supple and prevent cracking, your endothelial lining needs these specific omega-3 fats to maintain its fluid mosaic structure. When these fats are incorporated, they change the signaling environment of the artery. Research shows that EPA and DHA significantly increase the expression of endothelial nitric oxide synthase, or eNOS. This is the enzyme responsible for creating nitric oxide. Without sufficient omega-3 integration, this enzyme becomes sluggish. It doesn't switch on with the speed required when you stand up quickly, walk up a flight of stairs, or experience a moment of stress. By having adequate omega-3 levels in the cell membrane, the eNOS enzyme becomes hyper-responsive. It reacts to blood flow velocity, a phenomenon called shear stress, by releasing a precise, immediate pulse of nitric oxide. This is the physiological secret to arterial flexibility. It allows your vessels to dilate instantly, accommodating the blood volume your heart is pushing forward. Now, why does this matter so much after 60? Because as we age, our natural production of these omega-3s decreases, and our ability to absorb them from plant-based sources, like flaxseed or walnuts, drops significantly. The conversion rate of ALA, the omega-3 found in plants, into EPA and DHA is remarkably inefficient in older adults. You can consume plenty of plant-based fats, but your body simply cannot convert them into the high-potency molecules your heart requires for this specific repair, and dilate mechanism. This is why eating fish is not enough. You need the direct, preformed EPA and DHA found in salmon. But here is the critical detail. Not all salmon provides this benefit equally. Most farm-raised salmon is fed a diet rich in vegetable oils and corn. While it still contains some omega-3s, the ratio of inflammatory omega-6s to anti-inflammatory omega-3s is often skewed, negating the very benefit we are trying to achieve. To trigger this cellular rejuvenation, you need the fatty acid profile of wild-caught salmon, which is fed on a natural diet of algae and krill, the original sources of these powerful molecules. I want to stop here for a moment because what I'm about to say might be difficult to hear, but it is necessary. Most of you are likely thinking, I already eat fish, or I take a fish oil supplement so my bases are covered. I need to be direct. In the majority of cases, that is a dangerous assumption. The supplement industry is largely unregulated, and the oxidation of fish oil is a silent epidemic. When you open a bottle of mass-market fish oil, if it smells fishy, the oil is already rancid. It has oxidized. Consuming oxidized fats causes the very inflammation we are trying to stop. You are not protecting your heart. You are adding an oxidative load that your endothelial cells have to fight off. Furthermore, there is a fundamental misconception about the heart-healthy label on many supermarket salmon products. Many of these are treated with colorants or preserved in ways that degrade the sensitive omega-3 bonds before they even reach your kitchen. Here is the belief-breaking reality. You cannot supplement your way out of a poor food foundation. You cannot pop a capsule and ignore the structural integrity of your vascular system. The real change, the biological pivot point, happens when you consume the whole food in its natural matrix, prepared in a way that respects the fragility of these molecules. We are going to move beyond the supplements and the low-fat myths, and I'm going to show you how to identify the right salmon and, more importantly, how to cook it so you aren't just eating protein, but actually delivering a therapeutic dose of heart-regenerating nutrition. This isn't just theory. It is the difference between surviving and thriving after 60. Now that we understand the role of omega-3s in arterial elasticity, we must address the second major pillar of cardiovascular decline: chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation. If stiffening is the rust on the pipes, inflammation is the debris that catches on that rust, eventually forming the blockages that cause real, acute danger. After 60, your body's inflammatory response becomes less precise. In your younger years, inflammation was a focused, short-term tool used to heal a cut or fight a virus. It would turn on, complete the job, and turn off. As we age, that off switch becomes faulty. We enter a state of chronic, low-level inflammation, what researchers call inflammaging. In the context of your heart, this is devastating. When your endothelial lining is already stiff and struggling to produce nitric oxide, it becomes a magnet for inflammatory cells. These cells, called monocytes, detect the damaged, rigid tissue and attempt to repair it. But because the inflammation doesn't turn off, they don't just repair, they overreact. They infiltrate the vessel wall, consume oxidized cholesterol, and transform into foam cells. This is the beginning of the plaque-building process. This is why focusing solely on low cholesterol often fails. If you lower the cholesterol, but do nothing to dampen the inflammatory signal or fix the endothelial stiffness, the plaques still form, just perhaps at a slightly slower rate. Wild-caught salmon provides a powerful countermechanism here. Specialized lipid mediators known as resolvins and protectins. These aren't just fats, they are active signaling molecules derived from EPA and DHA that specifically target that faulty off switch for inflammation. When you consume salmon, your body doesn't just store the omega-3s, it converts them into these resolve molecules. They act like a cooling mist on a forest fire. They signal the immune system to stop attacking the vascular wall. They clear away the cellular debris that has accumulated, and they encourage the endothelial cells to resume their normal, protective function. Think of it this way. Your heart is constantly being bombarded by inflammatory signals from stress, environmental toxins, and the natural process of aging. Salmon is the biological neutralizer. It provides the building blocks not just for structure, but for the chemical signals that tell your body, the fire is out, you can stop attacking your own vessels. When you make this a weekly habit, not a daily high-dose supplement, but a weekly, nutrient-dense ritual, you are providing a consistent, rhythmic supply of these mediators. You are effectively shifting the environment of your arteries from pro-inflammatory and reactive to stable and regenerative. This is why even a small, weekly dose of the right nutrients can yield such outsized results over the long term. To understand how significant this impact truly is, we must look at the data. I want to highlight a landmark analysis published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. Researchers followed a large cohort of older adults over a 10-year period to observe the relationship between circulating levels of long-chain omega-3 fatty acids and the incidence of major cardiovascular events. The results were striking. Even after adjusting for other variables, such as blood pressure, smoking status, and physical activity levels, participants with the highest levels of EPA and DHA in their blood had a 30% lower risk of coronary heart disease and a significantly lower rate of age-related arterial stiffening compared to those with the lowest levels. But here is what I find most compelling about this study, and what researchers often gloss over. The benefits were not linear. They didn't increase infinitely with higher doses. Instead, there was a clear threshold effect. Once individuals reached a certain level of omega-3 saturation, their vascular risk profile stabilized. This suggests that you don't need to consume massive amounts of fish every single day. You simply need to reach that optimal cellular concentration and maintain it. A separate study conducted at the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health looked specifically at the marine-to-inflammatory ratio. They found that individuals who consumed wild-caught oily fish at least once or twice a week exhibited lower markers of systemic inflammation, such as C-reactive protein, or CRP, compared to those who relied on plant-based omega-3s alone. This research confirms the mechanism we discussed earlier. It is the direct availability of EPA and DHA that allows the body to manufacture the resolvins needed to turn off the inflammatory fire. The data is clear. It isn't about chasing a superfood trend. It is about understanding that your heart's ability to repair itself depends on the raw materials you provide. The science validates that a consistent, weekly commitment to these specific fatty acids provides the necessary scaffolding to maintain vascular health well into your 70 seconds and 80 seconds. Now you have the science. But science is only useful if it's actionable in your kitchen. To turn this into a heart-regenerating habit, I recommend the 3-step protocol. This is not about eating more. It is about eating strategically to protect the delicate omega-3s from heat damage. First, source matters. When you are at the market, look for labels that specifically state wild-caught. If you are choosing frozen, which is often an excellent and affordable option, verify that the fish was flash frozen at the source. This preserves the lipid integrity. Avoid salmon with added seasonings, sauces, or glazes, as these often contain seed oils that compete with the omega-3s for absorption. Second, the preparation is where most people lose the benefit. Do not fry or sear your salmon until the edges are crispy and brown. High heat cooking, anything over 350 degrees Fahrenheit, causes the delicate omega-3 fatty acids to oxidize and degrade. Instead, use a gentle poaching or steaming method. Place your salmon in a pan with a small amount of broth or water, cover it, and let it steam at a low temperature until it is just opaque. This low and slow approach keeps the fats intact and ensures that when you eat the fish, you are consuming the molecules in their therapeutic, unoxidized state. Third, pair your salmon with a cofactor vegetable. Steamed broccoli, asparagus, or even lightly wilted kale provide the natural antioxidants that further protect these fats as they travel through your digestive system. Think of this as the transport system for your heart medicine. This 3-step ritual, wild-sourced, gently poached, and paired with protective greens, is the simplest, most effective way to provide your heart with the raw materials it needs to maintain its youthful elasticity and resilience. To finish, I want to leave you with one final essential thought. You have spent years focusing on what you shouldn't do, what you should avoid, what you should cut out, what you should fear. But as we reach our 60 seconds, 70 seconds, and beyond, the focus must shift to what we must provide. Your heart is not a machine that just needs to be kept from breaking. It is a living, adaptive system that can be supported, nurtured, and resilient. If you found this information valuable, please take a moment right now to hit the subscribe button. I read every single comment on this channel, and the people who subscribe are the ones who receive this research the moment I publish it, allowing you to stay ahead of the curve instead of waiting for the algorithm to catch up. Drop a comment below. What is the one question about your heart health that your doctor never seems to have time to answer? I read every one, and your experiences are the direct inspiration for the research I bring to you next. Until then, take care of your body. It has carried you this far, and with the right fuel, it will carry you much further.